Welcome back. Gneiss here. I've been busy working on some larger projects, and I wanted to take a little break. Most of the animations that I use, like these here, are not dynamic. They have a start and an end and happen the exact same way, every single time. While making my videos, I often have other ideas for displays and animations that aren't necessarily useful for what I do, but maybe they'll be useful to others. This video is going to be about doing things in a more dynamic way, mostly based on player location. I've limited myself to only working on it for 1 week, and it's mostly just a proof of concept, similar to the raycasting video. The animation of the bridge and tower from the intro looks complex, but it's actually pretty straightforward for what's going on. I summon a block display offset from where I want it to be at the end and with size 0. I'm just using a small value here so you can still see it. And then I tell it to transform to size 1, move to the final location, and define how long I want that animation to take. And then when it's in the final spot, I set a real block and remove the entity. I do that for all the blocks at different times based on all those equations from math class that kids wonder, when will I ever use this? The answer is Minecraft. Stay in school, kids. What this video is going to focus on is doing animations based on player location instead of timing. The most basic thing we can do is just use blocks. I have this little setup here with 2 command blocks. One sets a block if I get close, and the other sets air if I move away. This is still a neat effect, and I built this little house back here that's only there when the player is nearby. For this and the rest of the examples, I'll be running all of the commands from function files in a data pack. I did something similar to this a few years ago while streaming, and a Discord member mentioned that SethBling did something like this years ago with a disappearing mansion. This was before data packs and long before display entities, and was all done with minecarts cloning parts of a build from one place to where the player was. A downside, or maybe a feature of this method depending on your use case, is that while you can interact with the blocks while they are here, they don't remember any changes you make. The build is essentially just in the code of the data pack, or in SethBling's example, the area that was being cloned. This is still very cool and can be utilized for a lot of cool effects. Seeing this made me think of windows into other worlds, and I wanted to see what it would be like having an area of a different dimension loaded around me. For this example, I actually have 3 different dimensions. There is the one I'm currently in, and then a second with the same topography but nether biomes, and then a third which is a normal copy of the overworld. I'm cloning the blocks from the nether theme dimension to this one in a bubble around me, and then when I get further away, I clone them from the normal copy back to here to reset them. This could be really cool for some adventure maps, like having a ruin that you could walk around in and see what it looked like in the past. Let's move on to something more advanced. We can do something similar with display entities, and we can smoothly resize them or even stop them at certain sizes based on your location. I really like the effect I got here where the blocks kind of shift around and it's not just a smooth shrinking in place. This was actually an accident and I kept it. When you load a block display, the bottom corner is where it's actually loaded at. So if you change the size, it just shrinks down to there. So if you wanted it to smoothly shrink from all sides, you need to change the translation so it's also moving half the size you are shrinking it. When I was making this function, I just copied a bunch of lines, forgot to change all the translations. It looked cool, so I went back and adjusted them more so the block kind of like wobbles as it changes. It would be cool to see this in a maze map or something where the walls would fade as you got close to them. The code for this is pretty straightforward. Inside this command block is this line. All of these are display entities with the tag of example2. And so each one of these is running the resize function. The resize function just checks the player's distance and then runs another file based on that. In those files, we use tags to prevent the entity from trying to change its size every single tick. If it already has the tag from this size, we return and do nothing. If it doesn't, it adds that tag, removes all the other ones, and changes its size and translation. The downside to this is that you can't interact with display entities directly. Even at full size, there is no hitbox. But you could do something similar to what I did with the bridge and set a block when the entities are full sized. I was chatting with my friend Conyer about this a while ago, and he created this example that does exactly that. Each block checks player position, and if we get close, it grows the display entity and then sets a block when it is full. If we back up, it sets air and starts shrinking. Even if we change distance while it's animating, it will stop and change the other way. The main difference between this and the previous example is that each position has a scoreboard value to track when it has achieved size 0 or size 1. This is very cool, and the data pack is pretty painless to implement, but it has the same drawbacks as the previous examples. Changing any of the blocks while they are real does not keep them on the next iteration. We can solve the memory issue pretty easily now with real blocks and cloning. I can change the blocks in this little area however I like, take some away, add some new ones, they disappear, and they come back. It preserves block properties and even MBT data like things in a chest. I'm cloning each block just a few blocks away, but it could be anywhere or even into a custom dimension like before. To do this, I'm using a type of entity called a marker. They are just running a function to check their distance and running the appropriate clone command. I didn't mention this earlier, but even though the clone command has been around for years now, the most important part was the addition of the strict modifier a few months ago. Without this, many builds would break if we use things like bed, doors, fences, anything that changes when updated. You can also add error strict, which prevents a lot of things from popping off if they don't have their supporting blocks. Moving on, if we wanted to combine this cloning with smooth animations, it's an entirely different problem. This might not seem like a hard thing to do, but the game definitely doesn't make it easy. These stairs here have these block properties in this format, but to summon a display copy of it, we need this information converted into NBT data like this. And there is not a native way to convert between these two in the game. But then I saw a Cloud Wolf video where he was converting a build into display entities all in game. And to solve this very problem, he used the data pack by Triton 365, which allows you to match block data to a loot table and copy that data into a block display entity. I won't go into everything. His video is linked in the description if you want to know the details. But the results are that you can run this command and you get a raw COD, which solves all of our problems. Because with this data pack, this COD now has the data for the stairs that I am standing on. And so with this command, I can execute it, and it summons a copy of the block that I was in. I can place down any block, and as long as I'm inside it, run the command, and I make a copy. So all we need to do now is, instead of me running the command, we can have our markers run the command. And that was the last part of the puzzle. We can now combine strict cloning, markers, and loot to block display to create a smoothly animated structure all in game. I have it set up within this rectangle, and we can build whatever we want, and then step away, and it all shrinks and disappears. I don't have it quite going up that high. But we can make changes, and it still works. We can paste our house from the beginning, go inside, leave our stuff in the chest, walk away, come back, and it's all still there. Technically, this should work also because it's cloned in the same dimension and it's loading. So if we walk away and then wait for a bit, and then if we come back, it's still running, and it's actually been making iron. And this is because in this example, I'm just cloning everything up here while it's gone, so it's still loaded. And there's our all-important fish right there. I just have it loaded in at 000. That's where that is in this world. But you can place this anywhere. And there are a few things that just don't work or are buggy. Any paintings or item frames or armor stands, since they're entities and not technically blocks, they're not affected by the clone command, and so they won't work. You could probably implement the summon command as part of this and make those work as well. Also, due to the limitations of block displays, they don't do water. So if you have that, it'll still disappear and come back, but you won't actually have the visual for it because you can't have block displays of liquids. Like I said, this is mostly just a proof of concept, and it's entirely possible that someone has already done this. I just wanted to mess around with the idea and get it out of my head. This doesn't just have to be shrinking and growing either, or even based on player location. You could have a house that has different rooms depending on the player that is there, or a little house that you carry as an item, and then when you place it on the ground, it grows into your mobile base. The real base would be cloned from some force-loaded chunk in another dimension or something. If you are interested in playing around with this, there is a world download in the description, and the data pack is broken into each of these examples. I kept Conyers just the way it was, and it has the great name of proxblocks. Example 5 here only has 5 functions and like 20 lines of code total. The only thing you need to do to get this to run basically is summon markers with this tag. And I have this command block here with a fill command set up to already do that. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Dingy for making the tower and bridge build from the opening. He got that to me nearly a year ago, and I'm glad I put it off because Strict was added within that time, and it made this so much better. Thanks to Conyer for his help with things. If you like these technical examples, his channel is a great resource, and likewise for Cloud Wolf. Channels like these are invaluable for seeing what's possible, and they deserve way more attention. I hope you have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I actually don't have anything to go here. Oh wait, the tower. It looks cool from the inside too. Time to get back to writing and making that vintage story review.